guitar collection. It's an incredibly special day today because I am here with one of the hardest to find guitars in the world, and that is no exaggeration. This guitar is made by Antonius Müller, the famous German luthier who's built guitars for many of the most famous concert artists in the world, as well as many of the most famous young players that are coming up on the scene, winning the biggest guitar competitions. In fact, these guitars can be found in the hands of Sharon Isbin and Yellow de Sadario, Zoran Dukic, members of the LA Guitar Quartet, and the list goes on and on and on. And in young players' hands, you can find incredible players like Campbell Diamond, Hao Young, as well as Francisco Luis. Both of those last two who are actually both prize winners in the past Guitar Foundation of America competition, this very last one in 2014. So you can hear their finals performances on Antonius Müller guitars. This has earned Antonius Müller a waitlist that's more than 12 years now. And it's for a very good reason. These guitars are not just of legendary status, they are also actively being performed on. And when people get these guitars, they often never let them go. Now, this particular one, before I talk about the sound, I have to tell you a little bit about the specs because that also makes it one of the most rare guitars in the world. One of the most rare Müller guitars because it is a Cedar double top from the year 2020, but the back and sides are made of Brazilian rosewood, which I have to say, this is the first Antonius Müller guitar I've ever held that has Brazilian rosewood on the back and sides. I know he makes them, but very rarely. He has a small stock of them. And of course, you can see this is a gorgeous set of Brazilian rosewood. And what I really like is that this sapwood that's in the center that runs along the back of the guitar, you can also see up on the headstock of the guitar, which is another thing that you'll see on almost no Müller guitars. This one has it all. Now, Antonius Müller has told me that his Brazilian rosewood guitars might have a little bit more sparkle in the high end of the guitar, so in the trebles, just have a little bit of something extra in them. And I have to say, I find that to be really true on this guitar. But before I get into the sound of it, I want to talk a little bit more about the specs. I said it's a Cedar double top, but you have to know that Antonius Müller is really the pioneer of the Balsa double top, which you will really quickly see when you lean this guitar into the light. You can see this chevroning pattern through the top, which you are actually seeing through the layer of cedar, the first layer of cedar, I should say, and into the center of the guitar, which are these thin balsa strips. Now, this chevroning pattern with balsa strips is something that Antonius Müller pioneered. Not the double top, he didn't invent the double top, but the chevroning and this balsa double top interior, it's something that he's so well known for and that he's perfected over the years. Now, you will see his classic rosette. It never changes. It's the same on every guitar. It's so beautiful. You see little strips of red in there, this weaving pattern in the center. And then when you look down at the bridge of the guitar, you'll see this piece of Brazilian rosewood he used for it. And on the tie block, I love this little piece of wood he uses, a lot with the same little pattern along the outside that you'll catch on his rosette. And then you'll also see that it has a raised fingerboard. It's not a dramatically raised fingerboard, but it's enough to where you can reach the higher frets a little bit more simply. And looking up at the headstock, of course, I mentioned how beautiful that plating is on the top of it with the sapwood center. But then you have the finest Scheller machine heads here that are incredibly smooth with dark mother of pearl buttons. And now I have to talk a little bit about the sound of this guitar. Now I have to say, Antonius Müller guitars are incredibly consistent, and I've had the pleasure of playing now many of them and reviewing a few of them on this channel. And one thing that you'll notice on this guitar and on so many of them is the evenness all across the fingerboard. This is the type of instrument that for all repertoire that you play is going to sound amazing. And it gives you this feeling of trust that I truly feel is unparalleled. This is the gold standard for me as far as how reliable of an instrument it is. And of course, one could say that about the tone and everything else, but I'm fortunate enough to play so many different amazing instruments from 200 years ago. So that's more of a subjective variable. I think the tone is amazing on this guitar, but how even and consistent it is top notch on this instrument. And that goes for also when you play higher up on the fingerboard, the sustain is so even, it sets the gold standard. I just want to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about there. No notes jump out at you like being louder or a strange timbre. They all have this quality that is just like this bubble bursting of tone. I mean, it is just, it's something else, really. I mean, there's really not much you could ask for. The sustain, the resonance, how many actually overtones and sympathetic vibrations this thing has. It is just bursting with energy. And also you'll notice that when I have a little bit softer of an attack, it has this purr, this velvety tone to it that's so charming. But I have to be honest, sometimes that can get a little old. So when you push a little bit more into the guitar, listen to this. A little bit more of a feedback of this brightness that you'll hear in the most amazing Spanish guitars. And by the way, I've done an interview before with Antonius Müller, and man, he tells his life story about how he got into guitar building and his progression, and how all of these famous players, I guess starting with actually Scott Tennant was the first famous player to really pick up one of his classical guitars and buy one and love it, who actually then showed it to Sharon Isbin. Anyways, I could go on about his story, but one of the things he talks about in this interview is how he was inspired by the great sounds of Antonio Marin Montero and Daniel Friedrich, and how these guitars just felt like something else to him, and how he discovered that every little detail inside a guitar matters with these great Spanish and French makers, and you really notice that characteristic in his guitars. So definitely check out that interview if you haven't yet, and check out the other reviews of these Antonius Müller guitars. But you hear that character that he's talking about. It's just that every single area of the guitar has something special to offer and doesn't sound like it's just stale somewhere. It's all really exciting. It's all also a guitar that I have to say you don't have to try very hard in order to get a good sound out of it. You know, some of the instruments I've talked about have been extremely lightweight double tops that are super, super loud and super, super responsive. This guitar is extremely loud. It is not amongst the loudest guitars of the double top world. However, it is extremely easy to get a great sound out of. It's not one that's going to punish you when you have slightly off nails. It is one that still maintains its clarity, but is not completely unforgiving. And the sustain is second to none. So that's another thing that differentiates this one with the super, super lightweight double tops, is that the sustain, if you complain about the sustain on this guitar, something is wrong with your fingers or your ears. So get both checked out. But let me show you some of the bass strings on this guitar. Dynamic range on this. I mean, it's not just the dynamic range, it's how it sounds when you play lightly. And the contrast that you can get. It's something else. You really feel like you have demand over the instrument. You have control. Well, I took a very long time to show you all those different strings, but I hope you hear what I'm hearing. I have to say, this is one of those guitars that makes my job feel really easy. Playing on it, I mean, I didn't even talk about the neck. I mean, I always do. It's so comfortable on this one. Some of Antonius Müller guitars' necks are a little bit more D-shaped and thick. This one is on the thin side, and the fretwork, everything is just, the action, it just feels so easy to play. I always say, and maybe you guys get nauseous hearing me say this over and over again, but so much of the playability of a guitar has to do with the sound of it. And this guitar makes your hands just relax. There's nothing that you have to try that hard to get on this guitar, especially as it relates to sustain and the trajectory of the note over time. It doesn't spike and then shoot down. It doesn't take an extremely long time to get up. And then once it's up, which is fairly quick, but once it's up, it just stays there. Maybe it gets a little louder and then it stays for a long time. And I think that's one of the most appealing things about this instrument. So before I play some more passages for you on this guitar so you can hear how it sounds in a more musical, in some more musical examples, I have to remind you to subscribe to this channel. There's like more than 60% of you watch these videos aren't subscribed. So when you subscribe, it makes me happy. I love seeing the channel growing. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this. If you think I did something wrong, hey, you spent too long on that second string, what's wrong with you? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Make sure to go to the website, guitarcollection.com. You'll see a box where you can enter in your email address. That way you get notified about instruments like these before they become available. If you're interested in reading more about this guitar, you can check it out on the website. The link is in the description. Congratulations to Antonius Müller on just, my God, amazing guitar after amazing guitar after amazing guitar. And this one is among the best guitars that I've ever played, and definitely a personal favorite. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll go ahead and play some more passages on this 2020 Cedar Doubletop with Brazilian Rosewood back and sides guitar by Antonius Müller.